times to move, change positions of item 10 and 11. I'm talking about option 11 first.
Okay.
We don't have shades.
Do the tree committee members get any sunglasses? So let's call the meeting to order. And we'll do Nick, do you want to do a roll call?
Sure. Tree committee member, or sorry, Chair Simmons,
Here.
Vice Chair Gardner, committee member Markham, committee member Elvira,
Here.
committee member St. John.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. May we have a moment of silence and please stand. Okay, I'm wishing for a productive tree committee meeting. Would anyone like to say the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Does anybody on the committee have any special announcements? I think it's appropriate to also ask the public, this is not comment, but just special announcements about matters of interest to City of Marina. Oh, you do? Go ahead.
City of Marina and Sea Forest SM is going to be having Earth Day here in Marina at Loch Padden Park on April 13th.
Oh, does staff have any announcements of interest?
Not at this time.
At this time, does anybody in the audience wish to address the committee on any items that are not on the agenda for this evening? So matters not on the agenda. Okay, no comments, nobody. Does any of our committee members have any ex parte communications to report?
I went to the MST orientation to look at the removal site of the station, Fifth Street Station, but all I did was communicate with MST employees and observe and watch their directions and what they were telling us about the site. I didn't discuss that with anybody else.
I went to that event as well. I want to thank MST and our staff for organizing it. It was really instructive. It helped understand the site a lot better. I spoke with both our city staff and also members of MST and their contracting team. I found it informative. Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody, the consent agenda consists of really just the approval of the minutes. Would anybody like to discuss the draft minutes, meeting minutes from last meeting for discussion?
I do have one thing to bring up, that one motion is missing prior to the continuance on before item B. It should be yes, second page.
Staff notes that we can make that change.
Okay. Anything else? May I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Now, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes along with staff's final edit.
Okay, I second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
motion passes. Now we're gonna move on to for public hearings. I lost my place because I went and looked for the missing thing. Just a moment, please. Oh, I'm looking at the old minutes. Why am I not finding it? Oh, I just got, there we go. No,
Page 3 of the page.
well, I'm looking at, yeah, there, okay, there we go. Sorry. So we're going to have a public hearing to open up the matter of the Marina Salinas Transit Surf Line Tree Removal Permit TR 23-04. Does our staff, do our committee members have any clarifying questions for staff before we hear from MST?
I do have a short
Yeah.
presentation just to catch everybody up if the committee would like.
That'd be great. And then will we hear from both you and MST?
Yes.
Okay, do we have any questions before they start? Okay, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, committee members. I'm Allison Hunter. I'm the project manager for the city for this project. And as noted, this is a special continued meeting of the tree committee. The tree committee met on this topic on January 10th. And just a quick recap, the project consists of the removal of 92 trees associated with the development of a bus rapid transit line known as the SURF project. On January 10th at the committee's first meeting, the committee received a presentation from MST staff and received some public comment and deliberated on the item and decided to continue to a date uncertain, which just means we had to reschedule or renotice this meeting, which we did. But the committee requested that MST return with a more detailed site plan of the transit center property specifically that better shows the proposed improvements and how the existing trees would be affected. That was one item. And second, the proposed transit center layout was requested. It was requested of MST to review opportunities to revise that layout a little bit in such a way that might retain as many of the mature and healthy cypress, oak, and Monterey pines as possible, and then provide more information on the replanting plan. So revisions based on that last meeting and those requests that MST did provide are as follows. They did make an effort to redesign, and I think a lot of that was explained to folks who attended the pop-up open house. Well, when MST staff was able to really show people around on the property and get a better view of the grade and the grading that would be required. However, in the end, it is still proposed to remove 92 trees. So none of those trees are identified to be retained. However, MST did provide a much more detailed replanting plan that includes a change in species to better match the city's tree palette and the Marina Tree and Garden Club tree list. So still a combination of coast live oak, Monterey cypress, Olea europea, and Ceanothus. Another change since the last meeting was the city has also added a CEQA exemption to the environmental review portion of your staff report. So in addition to finding the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation and monitoring plan that MST prepared under CEQA as adequate, we're also putting forth their exemption that they adopted to in terms of CEQA. So as we noted, MST did host a pop-up on Saturday, February 10th at the proposed transit center. Approximately 15 members of the public attended. I was there for a little while. And then there was a change to the just the total count for the trees to be replanted from the first staff report. The municipal code does allow that if the trees are not healthy, they don't have to be replaced or counted in the replanting plan. So that was a little modification there. Otherwise, there's no change to these maps. So this is the map you saw before showing the TAMC right of way and the trees to be removed. The orange hatch is hard to see here, but that's the coastal zone area. Here's a rendering of the Del Monte and Palm Avenue transit stop. No change to this slide. This is their new site layout. So again, a little bit hard to see in this slide, but the yellow and green labels denote trees to be removed and retained respectively. And then this is referred to as a heat map. So the red and pink shades are denoting areas that are going to be cut. And then the blue and purpley shades are areas that would be filled. So this just demonstrates the amount of earth moving that would be required on the site, and thus the reason for the tree removal. No change to this site. This slide I just put in because this is the portion where the California Coastal Commission has determined they actually retain coastal development permit jurisdiction here, even though it's in the city's LCP. This is a little bit outside the realm of the tree committee, but I thought I would just throw this in as a clarifying illustration. And then this is a new slide showing how the proposed Fifth Street Transit Center will sort of attach to that TAMC right of way. Then here's a rendering of the proposed transit station. No change on this slide. You've seen this before. I did want to point out a just very recent change that was brought to my attention. The conditions of approval in your staff report did not take into consideration the changed replanting plan. So this proposed condition of approval, J, just clarifies that the planting plan should correspond to that planting plan that's been included. It's the new plan that's been included in this packet rather than the original condition of approval, which is now defunct. So that wraps up my presentation. I do have a proposed motion here for when the time comes, and it does include just a reference to the amended condition of approval. So if there are any questions for staff, I'd be happy to attempt to answer those. And then MST staff does have another short presentation.
I have a question. So I didn't quite see it said a replacement of, because 10 trees were, sick. We're just, they're taking out 82 healthy trees, but it's still a 2-to-1
Yes.
for replacing the 82.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That's all. I just clarified that.
But to clarify also, looking at the planning plan, not all of those are going to be planted. on
Right,
site.
it will,
Yeah.
it will be a combination of replanting and the in lieu fee.
I have a question about the planting plan itself. Is there any room to propose some different species at a later date?
I think if the committee is interested in proposing species, it would be most helpful to have that in the record at this meeting if possible.
Okay, well, I can make a few recommendations. I would recommend, is it appropriate to do that now?
It might be best procedurally if MST could make their presentation and then you can get into the
We'll
iterative.
come back to it.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Allison, the staff? Okay, well, let's move on. Does the MST have a presentation? I've heard that you do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for considering our tree removal permit again this month. And thank you for those of you who came to our pop-up site visit in our early February. So next slide, please. So I'm going to go through a brief overview of the SURF project as it relates to tree removals, talk about those tree removals and replacements, and then the tree types. And we're open to different types of trees at your suggestion. So, okay, perfect. Thank you. So first I'd like to show here on this map, this is a new map that you haven't seen before, and how the SURF project kind of fits into our overall mobility needs in Monterey County. So SURF buses will begin their route either at the Monterey Transit Plaza or the Salinas Transit Center, picking up and dropping off people along the existing Line 20 route that goes through Marina and into Sand City and through Seaside to Monterey and back. So the new part of the Line 20, or SURF, as we're calling it now, is a busway, a road for buses only that connects from Palm and Del Monte, bypasses the heavily congested Highway 1 corridor, and is located on the railroad corridor that was purchased for transportation purposes. So it allows our passengers to get to their destinations on time without being stuck in that Highway 1 traffic. And the 5th Street station is kind of midway between Marina, Palm and Del Monte, and the Sand City station area. So going back to 1998, MST has planned for an intermodal center at the 5th Street station to support multiple modes of transportation, including bikes, a bike repair station, scooters, buses, cars, and future rail. At the 5th Street station, we'll be able to connect the WAVE CSUMB shuttle buses to CSUMB campus. It's scalable so that we can add additional bus lines as we move forward. And those are currently serving the VA DoD clinic. And then drivers can park and ride MST buses to Monterey, to Salinas, and they can let MST drivers do that driving for them. So let's see, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so I talked about the planned use of the 5th Street station. We were actually able to get that parcel, the 4.5 acre parcel that you saw at the pop-up from the Army Corps through the Federal Highway Administration as the Fort Ord base closure happened and land was transferred to public agencies. So again, the plan was to have a park and ride facility, multi-use, bikes, pedestrians. We are connecting our regional and local transit at this station and supporting the CSUMB students. The WAVE shuttle bus can get there, the new Dunes development that's happening around us, and the future TAMC parcel to the north, as well as the City of Marina parcel, which is also to the north. So to accomplish these Okay, I'm sorry. So we've gone through several iterations of the Fifth Street Station as a design team so that we meet certain project objectives. And those are improving overall mobility for our residents and our community, providing strategic connections to the Fort Ord Dunes State Park, to the future Fort Ord Trail and Greenway, also known as FORTAG, as well as the Caltrans Rec Trail. We also want to provide those connections to healthcare and education, including the VA/DoD clinic and CSUMB, as I mentioned, and improve on-time performance of buses traveling through the heavily congested Highway 1 corridor, and also connecting to the future Marina to Salinas multimodal corridor. So in order to accomplish these goals, we've designed the project to maximize the overall benefits and minimize impacts to the degree that we are able to, and it's feasible. So next slide, please. So we were originally had 115 trees that we had identified for removal, but with careful design as we went through the iterative process of matching the goals to and objectives to the site, we were able to reduce that number to a total of 92 trees. Of those 92 trees, 24 of them are invasive, 20 are eucalyptus trees, and 4 of them are invasive acacia trees. And our replacement plan has us planting 123 new trees that were selected from the city's recommended list and also from the Marina Tree and Garden Club. We appreciated that guidance for the plan. All of the new trees will be at least 7 feet tall. Many will be over 9 feet and some are over 12 feet tall so that we can establish that canopy quickly. And our tree establishment period will be such that we will ensure successful growth of those trees. So like staff said, the remaining will be in lieu fees for the city to plant wherever the city wants. So your committee asked for a site visit of the Fifth Street Station area, and we conducted that on February 10th. Aside from the tree committee members who were in attendance, we had several others joining us and walking the site. We had sort of laid out, I should say, we had our construction folks lay out the site so that you could see where the station was going, where the park and ride facility was going, and you could really get a sense of the terrain of the 4.5 acres. And you saw on that heat map, there's a considerable amount of cutting and filling, regrading to make the whole project work. So we were also open to ideas of how to avoid additional tree removals. And we considered an idea from your chair to move the bike path on the west side through the trees to be able to possibly save more trees. That was a good suggestion, and we had our designer and construction person, as well as some others, go out and take a look and see if that was feasible in order to avoid removing more trees. And unfortunately, it would have the opposite effect. And the person who did that analysis is here to answer specific questions if you want to, but we'd like to keep the original plan to avoid additional tree removals. Okay, so however, we have 92 trees that are slated for removal, but during construction, we'll monitor this to see if we can save additional trees. At this point, we don't want to promise that we can save a tree if we can't save a tree due to grading, cutting and filling and what have you. So I think the question tonight is whether MST has complied with the City of Marina's municipal code. You can go to the next slide. I think I'm ahead of things here, but you've seen this already. Keep going. Okay, stay there. No, next slide, please. Okay, and then you saw this in the attachment. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah, I'm going way ahead of myself. Keep going. Okay, okay, perfect, right here. So I think the question tonight is whether MST has complied with the City of Marina's municipal code to obtain a tree removal permit. And we believe we have both met and exceeded that requirement by hosting a public meeting in December, as you recall, to hear from residents about the project in general and also the tree removal and replacement plans. We hosted that site visit on February 10th. At the Fifth Street Station to get a real sense of that property. We've reduced the number of trees being removed from 115 to 92 trees, even before we came to this committee in January, knowing that saving trees is important in our community. And we've identified replacement trees that are compliant with and consistent with the City of Marina, as well as the Tree and Garden Club. And we'll be replacing trees at the required ratio and at larger sizes to get that canopy going quickly. And that's all I wanted to say. We do have the project team members behind me. And if you have any technical questions for them, they're here to answer them.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to any member of the public have any comments they wish to make? Anybody outside? Come on in. Okay, so we're going to close the hearing. So committee members, we can now discuss amongst ourselves and we can ask either applicant or staff any clarifying questions. Go ahead.
I have a question. In the middle of the parking lot, like, yeah, it's pretty much in the middle. There's an acacia number 3 and acacia 4, but I think that might be a misprint. It has an X, but then acacia is in green. Is it, I think there's just one acacia. Because if you look up on the exhibit B, it just has acacia number 4. Am I right with that? This 3 is not, number 3 says it's a cypress.
Got a big print on.
Do you want me to clarify the acacia thing? Yeah,
Yes, okay.
I don't know exactly what you're speaking to, but
Get the big print.
Is it still, yeah,
It's
Uh,
right next to the pink area.
yeah, I don't see it on there, but acacias per university site, specific plans, you don't have to tag them. You just have to GPS. Or nor do you have to take condition, because we were working under a specific plan in that specific area. So we were complying with that EIR.
So you
Yeah,
said all that, but
there's no tag on that tree is what I'm saying.
well, it should be coming out because it's an acacia, but I see a green acacia next to it. Is that probably not right?
Now, yeah, now you're speaking out of my realm. I'm not sure.
I-
That's not my figure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think that's just possibly a shading issue with the
With the blue.
blue.
Okay,
oh, yellow and the blue mid green.
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
because on the list here, it's green, which means they're going to retain it, number 4, and it's an acacia, but all the acacias are being taken out, right?
yes.
So maybe we
Yeah, I
should
think
make
that's just an
sure.
error on this illustration.
Okay, so we need to make sure, right? Because on exhibit B, it's saying it's in the green. Number 4 is in the green. Oh, I see. The next page, I see that it's number 4 is in the yellow. Okay. So who knows?
Can we ask staff to adjust that discrepancy?
Yes, we will make sure that the final tree removal plan shows all 4 of the acacias to
Okay.
be removed.
I mean, pretty much all the cases are going without question. Right? Okay.
Yes.
That's what we want. Okay, thank you.
Any other, I have a few comments, but does anyone else have, not comments, but questions? Anybody else have questions for staff? Or the applicant? Go ahead.
On that same exhibit B that we were just looking at. Up at the top, no, that one will do. No, yeah, that's good. Near the top is labeled the Fifth Street Trail, and below that is the Fifth Street. I guess that is the entrance for the buses. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Why are so many trees being removed on the trail where it doesn't really, it's not color coded for cut and fill? So I guess it stays natural. Is there other improvements to the trail that require the demolition of 4 or 5 additional trees?
I'd like to answer that question, for you. So for clarification here, the Fifth Street, refers to the busway itself.
Uh-huh.
The Fifth Street Trail refers to the bike path that will go from the rec trail to, 8th Avenue. But, right now, there's currently just a bike path in there, and getting a 24-foot wide busway in there, as well as making the curve underneath the underpass, it's gonna take us farther into those trees to make that turn into the transit center itself. We've optimized that as much as we can. We can't pull it any farther east due to geometry constraints a little farther up the page.
Mm.
As well as the bike path extending to the west of that.
Okay.
Yeah, the heat map did not extend that far. We were focusing on the transit center itself, but there is still cut and fill at that location as well, in addition to the horizontal impacts to the canopies and the roots and things like that.
Grading up the slope then is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we discussed that on site a little bit.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions for staff or applicant? Okay.
I have one more question about trees 641, 644, and 645, which is in the very east side of the parking lot. I asked the person at the pop-up, these trees are in an open reserved green area, but I was told that the grading that is needed to make the drop-off zone, that circle drop-off zone, doesn't work. But my feeling was that there could be a retaining wall to hold that area back, so the trees would not be subject to any grading. And these are pretty healthy trees. I believe it's a Torrey pine. I'll have to look it up. 641, 644, and 645. Yeah, Torrey pine. And they're beautiful trees and they're pretty good size. Is that a possibility that anybody could work with?
45 feet? 4 to 5 feet tall. Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, trying to get information from the team. The gentleman that just spoke before me is Blake Silkwood. He's our project engineer. And I'm Lisa Reinheimer from MST, Assistant General Manager. I failed to introduce myself before, but I introduced myself last month, so I figured you knew me. So for those trees, those are Torrey pines. Okay, those are Torrey pines. And, with the grading, we didn't want to promise to save a tree. We couldn't necessarily save with, slopes and grades and what have you. And I had those same questions about saving those particular ones, 41, 44, and 45. I think I need glasses. And putting in retaining walls is going to be, 4 to 5 feet at considerable expense to the project, of course. And, for the replacement plan and the landscaping look and feel, we feel like it's better to replace them with the scheme and the landscaped plans and replacements that we've proposed, rather than try to save something that we're not quite sure if we'll be able to save given the grading and sloping that we need to do there. If we can save them during construction, we'll save them. That's not a problem, but I don't want to promise you something I can't deliver. Yeah, there is. I know you and I and everyone else walked up that slope and back down again. So it's clearly got some challenges.
But the idea is that whole area is going to be a natural landscape or reestablished as a natural landscape.
Yes.
So I felt as if there was some work to be done, maybe, that they could be saved.
That species locally invasive, actually, yeah. Please speak it.
The Tory
So
pine,
Tory pines are becoming more and more locally invasive and they're being discouraged from being planted. You'll see that near the equestrian center. They're popping up all over and invasive and becoming invasive in Gilia habitat. From an arborist standpoint, I would encourage planting something native and taking out the invasive trees.
okay, so it
If
wasn't,
I wouldn't, I mean, I can't speak for you guys, but I wouldn't build a retaining wall to save an invasive tree.
no, I
Yeah.
didn't think they were that invasive, but
Yeah.
they're
Oh,
becoming.
they're not as aggressive as an acacia or a
Right.
eucalyptus, but they're starting to become more and
Yeah,
more
okay, I
prevalent.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So in that place, we're proposing Monterey cypress and the wild lilac, as well as, no, that's on the other side. Nope, those two, Monterey cypress and wild lilac.
I think we've heard, I have a few comments or questions. Can we look at the landscape plan? Okay, just propose that we consider some other species, particularly for the shrub layer, to diversify a little bit. Ceanothus, Ray Hartman is fine, but that's really the only shrubby species that we're planting there. So I would ask, consider Toyon, California native, Garrya elliptica is another one that I think would work well there. And also coffeeberry. Those are three other species, and there are probably some others if we had some more time to think about it. But it's really got kind of a one-note shrub layer here, and I would think about something else. Ceanothus actually has a tendency to get really ratty, and it can get infested with aphids and maybe high maintenance as well. So I would just think about maybe some other plants that diversify and maybe keep Ceanothus in the mix, but I'm not sure how many Ceanothus, there's 29 planted, so that's a lot. It seems like I had another comment. Oh,
Well,
go ahead.
While you're grabbing that thought.
Yeah.
So this was focused just on trees, and we do have landscaping plans for the smaller types of plants. And we have our landscape designer here that can address that if you're interested.
If you'll take those recommendations from the committee and work on them, I don't think the matter has to come back to us. I just think that we could communicate that. The best source for native information for this area you've already been looking at it is the Marina Tree and Garden Club website. I have a question also about the olive tree, Olea europea. Is Majestic Beauty, is that a sterile olive? I'm sure it must be. Is the olive that you're planting, is that a sterile olive? Yeah,
It's
okay.
a fruitless one, yep.
There are people in the community that are really concerned about pollen, and the sterile olives make very little pollen. It's pretty definitive. A third question to MST, what's the plan for maintaining this landscape?
Well, it would be similar to what we do at all of our other landscape areas. We have an outside landscape company that maintains our landscaping. So it would be no different than that. I mean, in the early part, of course, we want to establish that tree growth. So we need to have water, what have you, but we have a landscaper that maintains all of our facilities.
Okay. And this is a question to staff. Does the tree ordinance apply to, operations that are under MST land or lease? Do we have authority over how the provisions of tree ordinance for those properties?
Only in so far as a specific landscaping plan is approved by the city. So we do have authority to make a property owner comply with their approved landscape plan or tree replanting plan in this case.
Well,
So we can follow up over the years and make sure that things are being.
How about meeting standards, accepted standards of tree care and maintenance? Is that, do we have authority to request that?
Uh,
As a city?
Again, only when it's associated with an approved project that includes a plan
Yeah.
like this replanting plan.
Well, seems like a good time to bring it up. The MST Transit Center on, Rhine is maintained by an outside contractor. And there are some practices there that many in the community think are just not appropriate. For example, continued topping of the, arbutus trees, for example, and topping is rarely recommended for trees. And you're going to have to top them forever. Now, they're not a big structural problem. They're not huge trees, but it's unattractive. The people in the community have actually talked to the contractor and he kind of dismissed that. And to the extent that we have, maybe as a persuasive body, I would request that MST think about that they employ contractors that follow ISA standards and do a proper job with maintaining the look and health of the trees under their care in our city. That's a real sore point in the community, at least with people who know about trees. Other than that, I don't think I have any more questions for staff. Do we have any discussion among ourselves?
Chair, a point of clarification. Could you just remind me what the second tree species was? You mentioned toyon, coffeeberry, and what was the other one? Just for the record.
Gary elliptica, they're all really more shrubs. The toyon can be trained to be tree-like, but it's a multi-trunk.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think those would be good choices. There's probably some others. Okay. Oops. Any comment do we have any discussion amongst ourselves? Or are we ready to make a motion? All right. So I'll make a motion. I move to adopt this. Do I have to read all this? I move to adopt resolution 2024-01 recommending approval of tree permit number TR 23-04 to the Planning Commission based on findings, conditions of approval as amended. Determination that MST's mitigated negative declaration SCH number 20200800199 and MMRP are adequate per section 15096 of the CEQA guidelines and a CEQA exemption per 21080.25 section B of the CEQA guidelines. Do we have a second?
I second this motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so this matter's closed. I thank the applicant for coming back and giving us another presentation and for the pop-up and working with us on this project. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 9. And I want to flip to the actual thing.
Coastal development permit is there.
Uh, Yeah, that's not on our agenda.
even though there's two trees.
Commission.
So we have an action, item 9. Jeff and I wrote a tree committee work plan. And so the item before us is to review and discuss, and if everyone thinks it's appropriate, we approve it. Just a little background. In August, we had a meeting where we talked about what our priorities are going to be for the next 2 years. And the first discussion was an agenda. And even before that, I had asked staff, what can we do about having some sort of agenda? And Allison and Nick advised, well, how about creating a work plan? So a work plan would be kind of give direction for what the committee was going to work on. So that's what got that all started. And then we met again and discussed it and came up with a list of topics. And we appointed a subcommittee that consisted of Jeff and myself to look at the matter. In the meantime, while we were starting to work on that, City Council declined to extend our terms for 2 years. And so we were left with 1 year. So that required some scaling back of a list of priorities. We actually had several items. They weren't necessarily prioritized, but we had several items that we were thinking about doing. So what we have before you is what we're calling a 1-year work plan. And there really are, in the work plan, we decided, well, we should have an introduction about the history of the tree committee and what we do. And staff helped with some of that, but it's basically what you see here is what Jeff and I wrote. The tree committee actually was formed, it's interesting, due to a lot of concern about a lot of what seemed like a lot of cutting down trees. And we were formed as a limited term sunset committee, and then and we actually drafted a Marina's first tree ordinance. So the idea of that we would work on a new tree ordinance actually is kind of circular. It comes back to the folks that or the committee that was involved in drafting in the first place. Then we became a regular committee, and we're serving as we do. So we have a mission statement, and then we have 3 goals. And the goals that we came up with is to review and write a new version of the Marina's recommended tree list. And the idea about this, we've already started that work, and there's a subcommittee working on that of Jackie and myself. Then a second goal was to make recommendations for changes to modernize the city's tree ordinance, which we also talked about before. And then we considered a third goal. And the intent here was kind of a inclusive, kind of broad goal that would try to capture some of the things that we discussed in our meeting before. We didn't feel like we could include all of those things, but we could try to capture this idea. And that was to consider other opportunities and strategies to promote a healthy urban forest. So before we make any decisions, does anybody have any comments or want to keep going through the work plan in more detail? I don't know if folks had enough time to look it over or have any questions. Go ahead.
So Exhibit A is the part that you and Jeff worked on?
Exhibit A is the work plan that we submitted, yes. The staff made it look like an official city document. They did an excellent job.
How does goal 3 differ from goal 2?
That's a good question. Well, let's read it. Actually, maybe that's the way to do it. Goal 2 is specifically make recommendations for changes to modernize the city's tree ordinance. So the first thing we would do, and potentially tonight, is to form a subcommittee to review tree ordinances from both small and large cities with recognized effective tree protection programs and healthy urban forests. And then also to review city tree protection and regulatory programs policy based on experts. And then make a list of best practices that should be in a new tree ordinance. And we would make a presentation here in the tree committee. Then we would draft recommendations for new tree ordinance. And then review recommendations with the tree committee about potential changes. And this would be after another meeting where we present our findings, I think. And finalize a draft and submit to the Marina Planning Department. And then it would go to Planning Commission, and Planning Commission decide what they think of it, and then it would go to the City Council for review. So that's kind of a whole process specifically about the tree ordinance. And goal 3 is to look at other things that tree committees do besides decide tree permits, besides maybe write policy. So for example, I've already done a little bit of study of some of what other tree committees do, but even this own tree committee early on, they actually promoted planting of more trees. They actually, well, that's not a great example, but other committees do things like promote a healthy forest that aren't necessarily legal policy changes, but are other kinds of acts. Some of the things that we discussed in the committee included things like, well, maybe we want to promote a map of all the significant trees in the city, for example. And we had a lot of different kinds of ideas. So I think goal 3 is more about things that aren't policy, that could be something that the tree committee does. And it's more of a study of other tree committees and what the possibilities are, and then to come back to the tree committee for further discussion and possible action.
So
I don't know if that helps, but
I suppose my comment to that is that seeing as these kinds of goals play out in other like settings, goal 3 and goal 2 overlap significantly in reviewing other cities' tree ordinances. And I can see goal 3 very easily condensed into goal 2 as a sub goal I. Yeah, a sub goal I, rather than having to form another subcommittee for that. I just don't see it's well, from what it looks like to me is it's just a lot of duplicate effort for not a lot of what is the word? Output.
I think that's a fair point, although I think this was done with the intent of being everything that's not the tree ordinance. So I don't see goal 3 as having anything to do with legal changes to the tree ordinance. It could inform future work plans. It could inform other kinds of activities that we want to do. If you look at other tree committees, you can see a lot of them are doing in other cities. You can see they're doing things besides legal matters or that are associated with the ordinance. So it's kind of everything else. And it was an effort because we had quite a long list. So it was an effort to include things that are not in goal 1 and goal 2 as well. So I would not propose putting them together if we don't want to do it. We just drop it.
I would just say I'm not saying this because I don't like goal 3. I really like goal 3's like purpose. But I think that it would be better suited to focus on it in like a second like reinitiating this after this plan is finished. And if we incorporate it as a sub goal I under goal 2, it's basically laying the framework for how we should do it, which could give us potentially more time to consider actions and policy updates because it's just a bandwidth issue, I guess.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I agree with you. I think it is a bandwidth issue. And so, for example, I don't think we can form two subcommittees for the same goal. But for goal 3, we could have a separate subcommittee. And so the people that decide to do goal 2, they're going to have a limited bandwidth because they're going to be focusing on the tree ordinance. So if there are people interested in goal 3, that could be a separate subcommittee. That's the way I was thinking of it. There is overlap. Some of the same stuff relating to ordinance, I agree 100%. That could come up in the same place. Anybody else have any comments?
Just to clarify the goal 3, the other opportunities and strategies would not necessarily become part of the municipal code, but only of interest for otherwise, for instance, residents, their lots are only under the municipal code for a tree removal. But there's really the municipal code doesn't apply to residential lots.
It does, the municipal code does apply to residential lots, but there are, the vast majority of residential lots are exempt from the tree removal permit requirements. So in that sense,
And right, like homeowner lots.
yeah, single family residential,
Residential lots are that they don't have to apply for a permit to plant a tree or to remove a tree.
correct, right?
Yeah, but there is a lot of real estate, a lot of acreage in Marina made up of single family residential lots. And for instance, I'm new to Sea Haven for 3 or 4 years. But anyway, the developer plants 2 or 3 trees on each residential lot near the street, but nothing, say, inside the fence. And so homeowners take over the inside the fence, which is just a sand, and are responsible for their own landscaping. And there is the HOA has some administrative control over the landscaping to a certain extent, but for approving tree palette and shrub palettes, et cetera. But anyway, the city doesn't manage that.
For Sea Haven, the Dunes, and soon to be Marina Station, that's correct.
Right. Or any of the other single family residential lots that have been here for 50 years or more.
Right, under a separate exemption.
Right. So anyway, goal 3 could promote to the vast real estate of Marina things that are not covered necessarily by the municipal code, which goal 2 addresses.
Yeah, and that's an interesting, I mean, I was gonna consider asking staff to reread the list if you have it handy of the topics, but we could potentially rewrite this to make it a little more clear that other than tree ordinance issues, goal 3 is about everything else the tree committee might do. And that was really the thought. And some of the topics that we had didn't really fall into a policy bucket. So, I mean, there was a very good suggestion, I think that Judith had it, was let's map all the significant trees in Marina. You know, I don't know the tree committee would actually go out and do that, but it could help promote that through, different ways. And that would actually, I think broadly, that would be considered an activity under the current tree ordinance, which is to promote a healthy urban forest. So those kinds of activities, and they don't require policy changes. They're just things that we would figure out how to promote. And part of it would be to study, well, how does a regulatory policy body in other cities, how do they do it? And that's really, it's kind of a discovery is what I was thinking. It's like, we've only got a year more on our term. So what are other tree committees doing and what have they done that looks like it might be working for them? Bring that information back to the committee and then we can see what we can do with it. Maybe it would sneak into the tree ordinance somehow, or maybe not, but it just seems like it's that precisely what you were mentioning, Judith, is this bandwidth is like no one can do everything on them amongst ourselves. So maybe having folks who are interested to look at that. That's why we stood it up. It's just to separate it out because we did have 2 discussions and it just seemed like, well, we can't have 10 objectives, but maybe we can have an objective that kind of captures some of that spirit of looking at other types of things. So that's what we came up with. Where I think we could make a motion to change the language or to make it better understood. I'm not in favor of bringing it into goal 2. Or we could just not include it.
I have a comment. My feeling is goal 3 is more of a community effort that we will try to encourage. Is that right? Is that what you're going for? Is like, what else can we do as far as encouraging or just putting it out there? I know other communities, we talked about the where they establish what percentage of a tree canopy they have. And then they can monitor that every year. And then I have friends that live in Atlanta. They were very upset when they found out that their canopy had decreased last year. And the whole community was pretty involved with this. It's a very forested city. But that's the language I'm getting. It's not a work of anything to correct or a new version of our policies, but this would be more of a policy of how to encourage our community
Yeah,
to plant
yeah.
trees, respect trees, trim them properly. And maybe we would do fundraising to help encourage fundraising to plant more oak trees or on the parkways or.
And that actually goes back to the Marina Tree and Garden Club history.
Mhm.
That's why they was a division because the tree committee did include fundraising and doing stuff like that. And it was determined by the city. If you folks are making money, it goes to city coffers. And so that kind of took the fun out of it. So they did form the Tree and Garden Club committee. So there is probably kind of a division between what a policy body can do that's proactive and using the powers of persuasion, but that isn't actually out there and community actually taking charge of digging holes and planting trees probably. So I don't know, but that's actually kind of the question is like my brief survey of some other tree committees, because I was looking to see if I could steal work plans from other tree committees. And I kind of was reading about some of the stuff they were doing. I thought, oh, that might be a cool goal. And that would cover a list of 8 things. And what you're talking about, promoting other activities as a body that, and so I don't know what we can do, how much time we have, but can we in public meetings say in our announcements or promote the Tree and Garden Club or other groups, maybe some of this stuff will sneak in to the ordinance if we have some good ideas that come out of it. It's really just a study of what other tree committees do. I think that's what we ended up thinking.
If I might, just add maybe a couple of items to help your discussion along. Just a couple of things. One reminder, Nick, of course, is bringing up the ordinance itself, just as a reminder for what the zoning code already identifies as the tree committee's role. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind when you're kind of going through these three goals, I think they're really great goals, but keep in mind that staff is directed to focus on the city council's goals and objectives, and they have a big, gigantic, long list. Updating the tree ordinance is not on their goal, so not to say that it's not a very worthwhile effort, because it definitely is, but it's not going to be a priority for staff. So I think it's very worthwhile for the committee to form a subcommittee and think of ways using, examples from other jurisdictions locally or not locally, and to work on it, and we can proceed through planning commission and things. But when it gets down to the nitty gritty, our director is not going to give us time, as dedicated staff to help move it through necessarily until it becomes something that the council hears about, which it might through your committee or other members of the community. Another thing to keep in mind is just when you're forming a subcommittee, I would recommend you wait maybe till your next meeting, because unfortunately, member St. John, this is his last meeting. He was sadly for staff not reappointed to the planning commission. So since he is a planning commission appointee to this committee, this will be his last meeting. So you will have a new member joining pretty soon from the planning commission. So you might want to put off forming the subcommittee until your next meeting. And Jeff is missing from this meeting.
Yeah, that's good points. Jeff actually helped write this, so I think he's in favor of it. And we only have now less than a year to go, so I think I will make a motion that we approve this. And see if there's any interest to form at least one subcommittee, just so we can get started. The next meeting's not going to be till April. So April 5th, what's the next meeting? April
10th, I believe.
Yeah. So if Richard votes yes, it might be his conscience. So I'm going to wait and see what the next member wants to do. Or say, I think it's a good idea, and whoever comes will like it. So I think that's the way I would go. We're halfway through, and Richard's participated in the first two discussions about this. That'd be my feeling. Any more discussion?
I will say that goal 1 is something we've been talking about since the beginning. So I would think that if we're going to form any subcommittee, at least it should be that one.
Well, I'll point out that I added one that we'd already agreed on. So goal 1 is already underway. We've already formed a committee. Jackie and I are on a committee working on the tree list. So really the only new goals are 2 and 3, as far as the actual work that's started. I'll make a motion unless there's more discussion. I make a motion that we,
I will say if we're forming another subcommittee, there's basically only one other one. So I'm confused. Are we gonna try and form goal 2's subcommittee if goal 1 is already underway?
well, you can hear my motion and that would come out, but we have one motion is to approve the work plan. And then the second motion, I could roll it into the same motion, or I could have a second motion about forming subcommittees. but one item is to approve the work plan. Or any modifications we want to make to it. And then a second motion, could be the same motion, would be to form subcommittees. But they could be separated out. But I'll just repeat, goal 1 is already underway and we have, that's just on the list to be complete. That's why it's there.
Question, can subcommittees be formed anytime during the year when the tree committee sees a definitive need? So even though goal 2 references a subcommittee and goal 3 references a subcommittee, we could approve the work plan and at a future date at an appropriate time, create the subcommittees. They could be created at any meeting.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, you can continue the two additional subcommittees to the next meeting. And then just approve the work plan as is or make changes if you wish to.
And I would, and that may be what we want to do, but I would, staff just pointed out that it's going to be hard to get people's attention. And we approved this work plan. First of all, the last term I had on the tree committee, I wasn't aware that we didn't have a work plan. And I'm not aware of any work plans for many years for this committee. So just the act of having a work plan, maybe somebody will notice, hey, these folks are serious. Let's look, they have a work plan. And so that's something we could actually show to the council and show the planning commission. Hey, we're going to work on this. So that's a way of advertising what we're going to do. And I think it's, if the problem's going to be able to get attention from the planning commission and attention from council, then this is one way to do it. So that's why I would say we should not wait. We should just, we want to go do these things. We should do it.
Well, I second your motion for the plan that you've written.
Okay, I didn't finish making the motion though.
But you
Oh, no, we had more discussion. I'll make a motion that we approve the plan as written. Any seconds?
yeah, I second.
How do we vote?
Yay.
You want a roll call?
Yeah, well, yeah, roll call.
Chair Simmons,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gardner,
Aye.
Committee Member St. John,
Yes.
Committee Member Olera.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. We have a work plan.
Okay.
It's actually a good point. Should we wait for Jeff? Or
Motion on
forming
the subcommittee.
subcommittees.
I think so,
Yeah.
at the very least, just
We're
so we
gonna-
can get it on record.
We're gonna have another member here. And he won't be able to volunteer for any subcommittees. So why don't we, there is actually one more item to bring up. Let's see here. Let's go back to this agenda. So we're closing item 9.
Okay.
Item 10. So I think staff has a very expensive service gift.
We just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge all of the contributions that Richard St. John has brought to the tree committee over the past year. He's been at every meeting and impeccable attendance, and he's just been a great member to both the tree committee and the planning commission. And it's been really great to work with him as staff. This is also opportunity for the chair, if you want to say a few words of thanks as well.
Well, I will open it up to everybody to say something, but I appreciated sitting next to Richard at all these meetings and getting to know him a little bit and hopefully get to know him some more. I remember your wife wanted to plant garlic and I had a garlic article I never sent you, so I have to remember to do that. And anyway, thank you for your service. You've been a real pleasure to work with. Thank you. Anybody else want to say goodbye to Richard?
Yes, thank you, Richard. I appreciate all the work you've done, and I'm sure we'll meet in other circles. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. It was great knowing you for the for the duration of for your time on the tree
So
committee.
now we can talk to you and not worry about
I'm gonna call.
violating the whatever you call it, the Brown Act.
I want to thank the committee. It's been my pleasure and my honor to work with you guys. And I also want to thank our staff who have made my job on the planning commission and the tree committee very enjoyable and very easy with these pieces of these packages, and they seem to grow every week or every month to be a lot more, and they are a significant amount of work, a lot of work, and it's really good work. I have to go over and above to find something to say or add, and I usually do. I read it and I study it, and I'm ready to get them if they. And that goes for their boss too. We know. But anyway, that's just the way I am. I like things done to the best of our abilities, and that's why I enjoy working with a team. I think the United States is unique in teamwork from pre-kindergarten to retirement. You know, that's what part of the reason that makes the United States great is just the people sitting here. Thank you.
Now that Richard's leaving, we can move on to, no, you're still here. So item number 11, I have an item to bring up for discussion, and I will go first, and then if anyone else has other items. I would like to, speaking of getting attention of the council, just point out that the tree committee serves for 1 year. The planning commission, who we work for essentially, or supply, we work under their direction or under their topic area. They have a 2-year appointment. And staff has pointed out previously, and I know it from my own experience, that it's just a lot of work to apply and get interviewed and then get training and do all those things. Then we ended up only having a couple of meetings, and then it's time to not be on the tree committee anymore. So I think we should propose, and I'm not quite sure how it happens, but that we should be promoting this idea that we should be a 2-year tree committee like other commissions and committees in Marina.
Oh, okay, staff noted that. We can either bring it back as a future item, or we can bring it back as
Yeah, and I also think that if your committee was so inclined, you could appoint the chair or any of you to make a public comment at a city council meeting as well. Just to reflect that this is the feeling of the committee. You don't have enough time with a 1-year term to get all the many things you want done, and have that kind of start their, kind of put it in their ear.
Well, if I have support from the committee, I'll make a comment, and other folks are welcome. But as the chair, I can make a comment as an official notification. Is that appropriate to?
It would be good to have the buy-in of your
Yeah,
committee
yeah.
before you represent your.
Well, no,
committee.
that's what I'm asking, but is
Yeah.
that model appropriate, that the chair represents the viewpoint of the committee?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any comments or support for that idea?
I support it, and I also feel like the meetings of the tree committee, standing meetings are quarterly. And so there's only 4 meetings, 4 times other than subcommittees but because of the Brown Act, you can't really subcommittee, I guess, is if it's limited to 2 people, then it skirts the Brown Act.
Yes, the 2-person subcommittee is not, it's less than a quorum of your committee, so you are allowed to meet privately.
But that's the only way that the tree committee can communicate it more than 2 people. And so, a 2-year term would be much more effective than a 1-year term. And it doesn't prohibit any member from resigning. It's not like you're in jail, waiting
Yeah.
for parole. So I think it would be very appropriate for the tree committee members to have a 2-year term. And then whatever the approval process is for remaining on the committee, I don't think there should be a limit to 2 years. Your term limit is 2 years either.
I don't think there is, because I've served on it. I was on the last one and then we paused it, but you have to go through the process again, which is probably fine, but a year is too frequent.
Yeah.
Anybody have any comment?
Has the tree committee hasn't always been 2 years, right? It was 1 year at one time?
It's 1 year currently.
Right now, your term is 1 year.
Oh, I thought it was just the planning commission.
No. This current iteration of the tree committee was reduced from 2 years, I believe, to 1 year. And I'm not sure exactly why that happened. But it's definitely something that could be brought up to council level.
So what you're saying, all of us are only on, they have to.
It's a 1-year
reapplied-
term
they
for all
reapply,
members. Yes.
Which
Yeah.
Richard cannot reapply because he has to be appointed. by the
He
plan.
could reapply as a regular public member once this cycle of terms is up. He just would not be representing the planning commission. And I do just want to make a point of clarification also about number of meetings. This committee is codified to meet quarterly. However, there's no prohibition from holding a special meeting, which is frankly what we've done for almost all of our meetings have been special meetings, because if there's a permit, then that's clearly a timeliness issue. So we can hold a meeting whenever there's a need to hold a meeting. We're not like stuck on those quarterly dates.
So what is the process right now? Because I thought it was a 2-year. So what is the process now for all of us?
You will all expire at the end of this term.
Which
Yeah.
is,
And then when does this?
This term in
January.
January 1st is the end of this term.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there
And-
was discussion of
You already expired.
extending it, which staff had proposed, but we got turned down at city council. So
Yes,
that's-
staff did
Yeah.
take it once to city council and for consideration, and I don't have all the details about why council declined.
I heard I don't know, I wasn't at that meeting where it was discussed. I heard a few things and probably just rumors, but it doesn't matter. We're just say, hey, we'd like to be like other committees. It's inefficient. It's wasting staff time to have to train us and interview and all that stuff. So what's the deal? Why don't we just do it?
If we're expiring in January, our terms, wouldn't that mean, I think I have an idea of why it happened, because we started kind of mid-year last year. So we're essentially on a 1.5 year term.
Yeah.
And I think
Mhm.
that's what happened. And then the next, well, I don't know.
so we're
I
saying
can't speak.
January, it's February now. We're not talking about next January, are we?
Yeah, I believe, Member Alvera is correct that it did start after
Because of
COVID,
COVID, yeah. Okay.
it re-upped, but it was kind of on an off schedule. So this first iteration was a year and a half. But then it's going to be 1 year.
Yeah, the
January.
proposal was, the council actually said 1 year. That was their decision. And the
Yeah.
proposal that staff took was to make it a 2.5 year term, which sound like plenty of time to get a bunch of goals done on the work plan. So,
And it should have
Yeah.
rotating seats as well, like everybody else. So all the members don't expire at once and you have to go through.
Yeah.
So that
Okay,
should
so-
be a part, if the chair decides to go to council, that should be part of your,
right, that's a good point. Rotating seats.
Okay, so I'm still want it clarified. You say January,
yes.
but only 1 year. So you're still talking about next
So
January.
you have this year in front of you still.
So that it's a year and a half.
January
because-
2025, January
correct.
1st, 2025, a year, less than a year from now.
Okay.
Do we need a motion?
No.
No.
So if everyone agrees that this is a good idea, I will take the idea to council as a 2 year, the tree committee would like to have a 2 year appointment like other committees in commissions in Marina, and that we should have rotating appointments so that we don't all expire at once. I think that's in code that has to be that way, so.
Yeah, the planning commission appointee would just follow suit.
Well, I'll do that if everyone, and whatever else you think ought to be in that. And is that just me? Do I get on the agenda for representing the tree committee? I just, as in the comment period?
Yes, what we're suggesting is a public comment period. You could try to officially get on the agenda to make a presentation, a formal presentation to the city council, which would be going through Guido and the city manager and or the mayor to try to get a little spot on the agenda itself as a presentation. Or you can just go during public comment.
We have 3 minutes now. Public comment has been.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, what do you think? Do we need more time to make our case? Does it have more official imprint if we say, hey, we're on the agenda?
What I kind of imagine in my crystal ball happening is if you, as the chair representing the committee, went to public comment and said, the committee is interested in this, we think it's a valid effort to make this a 2-year term, just like all the other boards and commissions. And you can kind of do a little snippet in your 3-minute public comment and ask, offer yourself to come back with a more robust presentation if it so pleases the council, and they can put you on an agenda.
That's perfect. Then no one has to write anything extra, so. Okay. Anybody else? So that's good. I'm glad that I've got everyone's support. Any other discussion items from anybody? Okay. No correspondence, and so I move to adjourn the meeting at almost 6:58 PM. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you should whack